Hey guys, and welcome to Full Stop Reviews. I'm your host, Matt Kime, and today we will be talking about Willy's Wonderland. But before we get too far into that, feel free to give us a like, comment, subscribe, hit that little bell. For a growing channel like ours, every little bit helps, and we're very much appreciative of it. Now let's get right into the review. So today we're talking about Willy's Wonderland. Directed by Kevin Lewis, it stars Nicolas Cage, Beth Grant, and Emily Tosta. It's essentially the latest in a long line of, I guess what you could call the Nicolas Cage B-movie subgenre. The movie kind of has similar aims as 2019's Mandy, which was fairly well received, especially as like a cult type of film. This movie has similar aspirations. Does it meet those aspirations? Part of the joy with this movie is that it's going for horror comedy, which when it's done well, it can really go well. And the movie's Five Nights at Freddy's, basically. It's the production team has come out and said, no, we're not trying to adapt Five Nights at Freddy's, but it's a janitor being hired to watch over a restaurant filled with demons in the form of animatronics. You guys make the call on that one. And one of the gags of this movie is that Nicolas Cage never says a single line of dialogue. That's one of the core parts of this movie. And so everything he does is done through physical acting and his eyes. And just, he has a good presence. He has a very imposing presence, but it's also very, very funny, as if everybody else around him is just slightly inconveniencing him. And this even applies when the animatronics come to life and start trying to fight him, is that he's just so blasé about it. Like, the contrast is just hysterical. Now, part of why he was silent is that reportedly he was a big fan of silent horror films dating all the way back to the days of German Expressionism. And so that's one of the reasons why he wanted to do this movie in particular to begin with. And I think it's a pretty risky choice to have the movie's biggest name and biggest star not say a single word. But I think it really works. One of the other core components to his character is that even though he's been kind of tricked into working and watching over this restaurant, part of the gag is that the townspeople are luring people into this restaurant to keep the animatronics from killing everybody. The humor is that he actually is fairly devoted to his job, to the point where he insists on cleaning up even when things are trying to kill him. The other humor is that he takes breaks every couple of minutes, or like every hour or so, to play pinball, and there are some great comedic moments that come from that. Unfortunately for this movie, he is not the only thing in it. The rest of the cast is spearheaded by Beth Grant and Emily Tosta, who play a sheriff and her adopted daughter, respectively, one of whom is kind of in league with the conspiracy that's going on in the town, and the other of whom is trying to stop it. Now, these two actresses play their characters fairly well. The reason why I'm not naming anybody else is that they're, for the most part, fairly forgettable. Like, Liv has a group of 5 or 6 friends, and all of whom are just kind of there to be the typical slasher B-movie. They're there to rack up the film's body count, basically. Which is kind of unfortunate, because in the early moments in this film, there's some of these characters that are given traits that seem a little bit more interesting below the surface than they actually might be. So, for example, one of her friends kind of seems like this blonde, ditzy type. But there's a scenario where Liv is handcuffed to a radiator, and all of her friends are desperately trying to find a way to get her out of that situation. Meanwhile, this one friend, very calmly, very collected, she's chewing on bubble gum, pops a few bubbles, takes a hairpin out of her hair, and then picks the lock on the handcuffs without breaking a sweat. And it's a cool little detail that you wouldn't expect a character like that to have. And the movie just kind of rips the rug out under that, because this character later on just has the obligatory sex scene, because of course there has to be one, and then just has her die very unceremoniously. And it just feels like a wasted opportunity, to be honest. If you're going to spend the time to show something like that, have it pay off down the road. Especially when it's a fun little subversion like that. This movie's pacing is kind of weird. So a lot of the death scenes, remember, this is a horror movie, people have to die. A lot of the death scenes happen within about 10 minutes of each other. Like, all of the friends who die within the span of about 10 minutes. And it's very, very jarring, because that happens around the midpoint in the film, and it gets to a point where there's half an hour left in the movie, and everybody who is going to die in that movie already has. I'm not saying that I have to see people die every 5 minutes, it just feels weird to have it paced out so closely together. It feels like a missed opportunity in building some of the tension of the scenario, or as much tension as evil animatronics killing people can inherently have. Because this is, let's face it, this is a goofy movie, and this movie takes every opportunity to remind you of how goofy it is. So, like, the editing, for example, is there are some scenes where the cuts, like, there's a new shot every 2 seconds, and sometimes it feels like too much is being thrown at the screen, and sometimes this like fast-paced editing style is used for really, really great comedic effect. Again, this movie doesn't quite know when to stop with it. I guess in summation, this movie is a fairly fun ride. When this movie commits to its premise and then goes for it, especially with the Nicolas Cage stuff, it for the most part succeeds. The problem is that only constitutes about half the movie, and so sometimes you really feel the length of the movie, even though it's not even 90 minutes long. It's like 86-ish minutes long. Pacing could have been better, and the way that the non-Nicolas Cage characters existed in that world could have been handled a little bit better. So I think, in summation, my verdict for this movie is going to be a yellow light. You've been warned. Proceed with caution. Not everybody's going to like this movie. Not everybody has to like this movie. Not everybody should like this movie. I think it was worth watching at least once. I had fun with it. I don't think I plan on ever watching it again. Thanks for watching this review today. My friends and I actually reviewed this movie way more in depth on our Return of the Movie podcast, which is available on this channel and on basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. Return of the Movie. Yeah, feel free to give us a like, comment, subscribe if you like what I have to say, or if you think I'm an idiot and know nothing about movies, let me know.